Hello there. Today we are taking a look at the new mechanical failures feature that has been added to the game and how you can avoid getting these mechanical failures and handle them if you should be so unfortunate to pick one up. If this video ends up being helpful, I would appreciate if you would like and subscribe, as that helps me out a ton. Now, to start off with, we're going to talk about what kind of failures can develop. And the failures are currently classified into three different tiers, if you will. Minor failures, major failures, and terminal failures. An example of a minor failure can be a ERS error that forces a restart of the ERS system, leaving you without ERS for a lap or two. Some of these minor failures can be solved fairly easily like that, but there are also errors that will persist for the entire race and can potentially even become permanent if you are unlucky, and as you keep using that path that now has a permanent minor failure, that failure can then escalate to become a major failure, before ultimately becoming a terminal failure over time, and the path becomes unusable. Now, while minor failures are generally simple and doesn't have a huge factor in your car, some of them are still pretty bad and can significantly slow down the pace of your car. And in general, what I've seen, gearbox issues do seem to be the ones that slow you down the most. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started on how we can manage these problems, or more importantly, try and avoid failures altogether. The biggest contributing factor to if a part can develop a fault is going to be the part's durability, straight up. Meaning that we're going to be focusing on anything that slows down that durability loss in order to try and avoid to develop failures in the first place. In the game, this basically boils down to two very simple factors: your car's engine cooling, and if we are pushing our engine during races, as temperature is a huge factor in how quickly your powertrain loses durability. Avoided curbs does have some effect as well, that we'll talk about a little bit later. So how do we do that first one? How do we raise our engine cooling? Generally, we do that with the use of side pods, as they are the greatest source of engine cooling, and I'd argue the cooling slider here should always be maximized. You should always take as much cooling as you can out of the side pod. You can also get cooling from the chassis, but the chassis isn't nearly as efficient as the side pod in giving cooling, and generally what I would recommend is that you maximize the slider on the side pods while minimizing on the chassis, unless you really need more cooling, as you can get back that performance loss from getting cooling on the side pods by maximizing performance sliders on the chassis, as again, the chassis isn't nearly as efficient as at giving cooling as the side pods are. For not pushing the engine, or rather not putting heat into the engine, which is what degrades it, we might want to take advantage of underfueling the car, as that allows you to run the engine on conserve and not really lose any time over the course of a race for most tracks, while also giving you an advantage should a safety car, a virtual safety car, or a red flag get called. It's going to allow for far less wear on the powertrain components, as we'll be running conserve, which allows us to run cooler than if we were to run on standard or attack. Also note that the AI is also taking advantage of this underfueling technique. As you can see, at the start of races, most of the AI are underfueled to a very high degree. They're not maximum underfueled, they are basically 1 or 2 laps away from it. But basically that is why the AI is so super quick at race starts. They underfuel their cars, they push for the first 5 laps or so, and then they hit the conserve button. And because they're underfueled by a good 10 kilograms worth of fuel, they are a lot quicker at the start of the race than they are basically at any other phase. So do keep that in mind. The AI is also using this. It's actually a pretty decent strategy. I have experimented a little bit with underfueling. I have a video on it on the channel. And generally, you don't really lose any time underfueling and running your car on conserve for the entire race. Generally, you'll actually end up gaining some time. So it's actually a very good strategy if you are struggling with faults in your powertrain components. And again, it just lowers the temperatures. You are somewhat quicker during the races, and it's a really good strategy for taking advantage of that. Even if you do all this, once the parts lose enough durability to become or enter the yellow condition, the chance of developing faults will go up, as the condition itself is an important factor in developing faults. Other things will also start having more of an effect at this point, your powertrain temperatures, as well as running over the curbs. As such, once your components start hitting that orange and yellow threshold, if they haven't developed faults yet, running avoid high-risk curbs will lessen the risk of developing faults in the first place, and while it might cost you a little bit of time, just a slight amount over the course of a race, it can very much be worth it to avoid developing failures in your parts. But that is generally the main thing that avoid high-risk curbs gives you. It gives you that it takes away that chance of developing faults from running over high-risk curbs once the parts turn yellow or orange. Now, we are going to take a quick look here on basically how you can see faults during races, and generally how you can see exactly what the fault does to your car. So during the races themselves, it's actually fairly easy to see who has developed a fault, if it has been developed during the race, or if it is something brought into the race to begin with. Now, Bearman here has brought in a major ERS fault, and this stop sign basically means that it's something that was there before the race. And you can also get yellow and orange stop signs from, say, light damage to the front wings, things like that, if they have an incident. But generally, this just indicates that there is some permanent damage in the car that was there, either, as a result of a crash or from before the race. Now, Alonso and Bottas has a yellow cog with an exclamation mark in it that's yellow. That means basically that they have, over the course of this race, developed a minor fault on one of their components. Show with an orange one means that he has developed a major fault. And we can actually have a look here and say take a look at Alonso. And if we go into here, car condition, you can see that on lap 18-19, he developed a minor fault to his engine that has yet to be resolved. And since it's been there now for a good 8 laps, most likely going to become permanent. On the other hand, we can actually look at Tsunoda as well, and he has developed, as you see, a minor fault on the ERS that got resolved, and then, I assume, came back, and then just got resolved again after a couple of laps. So, as you see, there's a plethora of incidents that can happen, and some of them can be resolved. And in Showcase here, he actually started out with a minor failure that then have now escalated onto a major failure, and might result in a DNF. We'll have to wait and see till the end of the race. But basically, that is what these symbols mean. This can be permanent damage, usually for just your team that's brought into a race, but it can also just be a sign that means this driver has crashed during this race, and he has damage to, say, underfloor, suspension, chassis, you get it, which hasn't DNF'd him yet. So, this cog, mainly the one you want to look out for if you're looking at damage, or rather for damage from the AI. So, do keep that in mind. Now, in this video, we haven't actually gone over any sort of testing to see exactly which faults are the worst or anything like that. This is basically just for more information about how you can try and avoid these failures in the first place. And I'll probably do a more in-depth video on failures in the future. But as some of you might have picked up, I am once again gotten sick. I have a fever at the moment, which is why there was no video yesterday. I'm taking it a little bit easier. And hopefully I'll be feeling a little bit better over the course of today. I'm hoping for a new patch, but if it doesn't come, it doesn't come. But yeah, apologies for not delving too deep into this one. I'll do it in the future sometime, most likely. But yeah, it's just a result of me just basically not wanting to start messing around with numbers while I'm not 100% there mentally because of the fever. And I do want to... I try my best to kind of deliver content that is accurate. I do try and correct myself when I'm wrong. So, yeah, I don't know exactly how to put this here, but yeah, that's about it. However, before I forget, you can still develop errors on fresh parts at wide durability. The risk is very low, but it's not 0. So even if you have a part that is perfect durability, you minimize risk as much as possible. You can still pick up minor faults, and it seems to be very common to do so when you simulate the game or simulate the races more. Just the races. You don't really pick them up during practice or if you simulate quali, but it seems to be very, very likely to some degree to pick them up if you sim the races themselves. Usually over the course of the season, you probably pick up 2, maybe 3 on each car, where a white part gets some sort of minor failure, so do keep that in mind. Simming is probably not going to be very helpful if you're trying to avoid these things in the first place. Now, as I said, I'm not 100% here, not feeling 100, tip-top shape, if you will. So I apologize if anything was wrong. Feel free to ask if there's anything I wasn't clear about. And yeah, I do like this new system. It's another layer of death. We'll have to see exactly how much it's going to affect the game, because right now it does seem to be very, very manageable if you do play your cards right. Again, I hope this video was helpful. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. And if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, helps me out a ton, and I shall see you next time. Bye bye.